As the first decade of the 20th century pressed on and the last of the Aran class was entering service, the pace and size of foreign ship construction was increasing rapidly. When the Arans had first been laid down, a typical pre-dreadnought battleship was 13 to 14 knots with a 12-inch main battery and 6-inch secondary guns, or something roughly to that effect. Now, ships were being designed that were several thousand tons heavier and carried significantly more powerful secondary batteries, the era of the semi-dreadnought. Those that kept with the approximately 6-inch secondary battery had a lot more of them, and so it was clear that to remain relevant, the Swedish Navy would need another ship. It was quickly decided that a full-scale battleship was out of the question. Not only would a single battleship be horrifically outnumbered by anybody who actually came to attack Sweden, it would not be able to utilise the shallow waters of the Swedish coast that allowed the current coastal defence ships to work with the shore-based defences so well. So it was instead decided to iterate again on the previous design. The options presented were essentially a slightly tweaked Aran, about 300 tons heavier, but otherwise basically the same ship, a somewhat upgraded version of about 4,200 tons, and a very modified design with double the main battery at 4,800 tons, which was 1,200 tons heavier than the Arans. After some discussion, the middle path was chosen. The battery remained as it had been in the previous two classes, with two single 8.3-inch Bofors guns in turrets, one fore and one aft. The secondary battery was increased from 6 to 8 guns and moved from single to twin turrets, meaning that a pair of twin turrets were installed on either side amidships using the 6-inch gun. The anti-torpedo boat armament was again 10 single 57mm guns, but with 3 more smaller guns thrown in for good measure, along with 2 submerged torpedo tubes. The armour was thinner than on the Arans, but once again covered a larger area, with the belt being 6 inches thick at the maximum, with large areas covered by 4-inch plate, with 5 inches on the turret faces and up to 2.2 inches on the main armour deck. Displacement was just over 4,200 tons in normal loading conditions, and the ship was a little faster than earlier ships, reaching just past 18 knots courtesy of 9,400 shaft horsepower, driving 2 screws via a pair of vertical triple expansion engines. This expanded power plant meant that she was unique amongst Swedish coastal defence ships in carrying 3 funnels rather than 2. Named for the then current king, Oscar II was laid down in late 1903, launched in summer 1905 and commissioned in April 1907. The delay between launch and commission was caused by the dissolution of the union between Sweden and Norway in 1905. Once in service, one of her first duties was to represent the Swedish Navy at the Spithead Naval Review of 1907, and as she was the largest and most powerful ship in the Swedish Navy until 1917 when the Sverige was commissioned, the ship enjoyed a lot of the more prestigious assignments of the pre-World War I period. In 1910, in common with other Swedish warships, she received a tripod mast and range-finding equipment, leading the fleet into World War I neutrality when war broke out in 1914. During the war, a couple of 57mm guns were replaced with anti-aircraft variants, and at the end of the war she took part in the Åland Islands expedition, which turned into a 3-way struggle between the Soviets aligned with the Finnish communists against Germany and the non-communist Finns, with the Swedes as the third side. Spending most of the 1920s in reserve, in 1929 her superstructure was slightly altered and she was returned to service as a training ship, then given a much larger overhaul and put back into frontline duty just before World War II. This latter refit saw the main and secondary guns given more elevation and better fire control, with the old 57mm guns swapped out for a mixture of modern 57mm, 25mm and 8mm anti-aircraft weapons, along with various other modern systems and updated machinery. In this guise, she saw out World War II, becoming a training ship in 1947, and then decommissioned into a floating school in 1950. Ironically, this role ensured her survival for quite a long time. The school was moved on only in 1974, which was then the trigger for her to be scrapped, although by this point she was the last surviving Swedish coastal defence ship.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.